Late last month, back in September 29th, 2021, I released a video in which I discussed GOG's release of IO Interactive's Hitman, a game that many consider to be a pretty good stealth game, but many argue that this game doesn't belong in GOG specifically because GOG is a storefront whose mission statement is DRM-free games, meaning no online requirements to be able to play it properly. Once you download the installation file, you can take that and just do whatever you want with it, install it on however many computers. You don't have to check in online, and it's a convenience that's become the main appeal of GOG, but many felt that Hitman betrayed that because it described itself as a DRM-free game, no activation or online connection required to play, but you really do need an online connection for Hitman because of how many features are locked behind an online connection. As stated here by the developer of one of the ports, I believe, it reads, while offline you cannot access the escalation missions, elusive targets, or user-created contracts, and will not be able to complete challenges or earn XP toward your mastery level for each destination. And what that means is that you cannot unlock things that give this game the replayability factor that is at the core of the experience. As Eurogamer points out, you also have to be online to unlock new equipment, starting locations, to get mission scores, and level up your location mastery. Many features such as unlocking weapons, items, outfits, starting locations, and more are locked behind an online requirement. So while some may be able to argue that, well, it's technically not DRM because you can access the core game without having to connect online, the fact remains that these features, all these things, are so central to the experience of Hitman that to require an online connection to unlock this stuff might as well be its own form of DRM. And that's what many argued in the reviews of this game that got tons of negative reviews because of the mismarketing that this was DRM free, with GOG users expecting that the games that they purchase will not be that, and they were advertised one thing and given another, which is why we saw the review score be at a 1.3, why it was so low, and that's why a lot of people complain about this aspect of the game. Now, it didn't help matters that CD Projekt and GOG's response was less than ideal. This Reddit post right here kind of describes everything. GOG staff removing bad reviews for Hitman 2016, criticizing the DRM on their supposedly DRM-free store. And you can see this if you go to the GOG forum, where a member of the GOG team said, "Thank you for bringing this to our attention, the whole DRM aspect. We're looking into it and we'll be updating you in the coming weeks. In case you have purchased Hitman and are not satisfied with the release version, you can use your right to issue a refund. At the same time, while we're open for meritful discussion and feedback, we'll not tolerate review bombing and we'll be removing posts that do not follow our review guidelines." And the argument was, well, how is it review bombing when what a lot of these reviews are saying is legitimate? You did say this was going to be a DRM-free game in your listing. It's not really a DRM-free game because so much is locked behind online requirements. So there is technically DRM in this game, and people giving it a 1 star because it's not the product that was advertised. A lot of people argue, well, that's fair. These are negative reviews, and some of them are harsh for sure, but they're valid. And GOG's own guidelines stipulate that you can write negative reviews if you're unsatisfied with the game due to gameplay, graphics, in-game mechanics, and features reasons. You are free to write a review and share your opinion with other GOG users as to why you do not recommend it. And the fact that it's got DRM in a DRM-free store is a valid reason indeed to issue criticism. Now, it was later clarified that they will not remove the constructive reviews, only those that are against our review guidelines, potentially referencing the fact that if you're not polite and constructive about your review and use language considered offensive, inappropriate, or abusive, then that will be removed. That's one thing if somebody steps out of line in terms of how far they take the toxicity and abusive language and, issue death threats and insults that are just disgusting and unacceptable, fine, but it just didn't create the best of impressions when they labeled the entirety of the situation as review bombing when a lot of the reviews are very much valid and expressed genuine constructive criticism about how the game that was released on GOG was marketed. And it's been a few days since. We haven't heard back from CD Projekt or GOG, but just yesterday, on October 9th, 2021, we started seeing headlines like this: Hitman Game of the Year Edition removed from GOG over online DRM. Here's another headline from PC Gamer that reads, GOG says they shouldn't have released Hitman on their store and removed it. So at the end, they did listen to the feedback and came to the determination that Hitman just in its current state doesn't belong on the DRM-free store GOG because so much of it is online required. And this is the message that was output by the folks at GOG. This specific GOG team member said, "Dear community, thank you for your patience and for giving us the time to investigate the release of Hitman Game of the Year edition on GOG. As promised, we are getting back to you with updates. We're still in dialogue with IO Interactive about this release. Today, we have removed Hitman Game of the Year from GOG catalog. We shouldn't have released it in its current form, as you've pointed out. We'd like to apologize for the confusion and anger generated by the situation. We have let you down, something that unfortunately CD Projekt as an organization has done quite a bit of as of late, and would like to thank you for bringing this topic to us. While it was honest to the bone, it shows how passionate you are towards GOG. We appreciate your feedback and will continue our efforts to improve our communication with you." And I would presume that people who purchase this game and ask for refunds will get that refund given the generous refund policy that GOG has implemented. But I really do think that IO, it's time for you to release this game from its online requirements. This is Hitman 1 we're talking about. It's plenty old at this point. And yes, you got Hitman 3, and I know there's a collection there where it essentially allows you to play through 1 through 3 and all of the missions and all that. But if you're going to release it on GOG, and if you're just going to release Hitman 1 specifically, remove the online requirements. And frankly, that's one of the things, I do love the IO Interactive Hitman games, but some of those online requirements to unlock things for single-player elements, I think is a bit much, and they need to dial back on that as it just makes for a better experience and allows the game to be released on stores like GOG where more customers could check it out. There will be times when internet connection will be disrupted, and it sucks that when that happens, progression is straight up 100% halted for a game that is, for the most part, single player. Don't get me wrong, there are certain online functionalities in this game that make sense, that it makes sense for that to be strictly locked to online, but unlocking things for missions, new locations, new weapons, new equipment, the stuff that is at the essence of replaying this game, to have that restricted behind online requirements, you know, it can be enough of an inconvenience that I don't think it really should be there. And as far as GOG goes, given the branding of this platform, they should have absolutely seen this coming, because again, we're not talking about a game that locks a multiplayer mode behind online functionality. Like, that makes sense. It's just even single player features, and you know, you can beat Hitman without an online connection. You can play through all of the missions once, but the whole point of Hitman is that you get to replay those missions with new starting locations, with equipment that change how you approach a mission. Because Hitman games are pretty short if you just play them once straight through. What is the appeal of that game is experimentation that is blocked by the online requirements of Hitman, and when so much of the core experience is locked that way, it might as well be DRM. I am at the very least glad that they took the feedback seriously enough that they eventually did do the right thing of pulling this game from GOG. You know, at the very least, if they would have warned people that GOG's listing of Hitman does have DRM elements, maybe this wouldn't have gone as bad, but because it was stated straight up on the storefront, on the listing of Hitman, DRM free, does not require online connection, people felt like that was false marketing, that they were deceived, especially given the nature of GOG as a storefront. And so I do think in this case, the constructive and reasonable backlash, you know, that made sense. It's okay that not every game is on GOG, because certain games simply just require online or are designed that way for better or for worse. And it's all right if those games don't come to GOG until the DRM elements or the online requirement elements are a little more loosened up. Now, they do say here that they're still in dialogue with IO Interactive about this release, so I'm curious as to whether IO will make a special exception for the GOG version for Hitman 1 again, which is a fairly old game, or if they're just going to decide not to release the game on GOG at all because the developers believe that this game has to have those online requirements for even basic unlocks for single player components, which I once again disagree with. If they do somehow make an exception for GOG's version of the game, then that would make this the best version of Hitman 1 because of that lack of online requirements, in my opinion. But, you know, I have to wonder whether IO would do this across the board for all of their releases. Why would they give GOG special treatment, given that GOG isn't the biggest of the big PC storefronts? Steam and Epic Launcher no doubt have a larger user base. I don't know, it feels to me like if they make an exception for GOG, then they have to remove those online requirements across the board on all of the platforms. Maybe. I don't know why they'd make one exception for one platform and, you know, not just make that a universal aspect of the game across all the platforms. I don't know how this will play out. I don't know why IO is so close-minded about this one aspect. Again, their games are great. I'm looking forward to the James Bond one as well, and you know, I support their endeavors, but this is certainly one aspect worth kind of scrutinizing a little bit and worth looking into in the hopes that they will be more open-minded about it. But yeah, aside from the mismarketing of Hitman on GOG and its DRM-free nature, the thing that really made things escalate to the point that it did was the threat of removing reviews. And a lot of people felt that their reviews were valid, and they felt like maybe their review will be removed just because they were, you know, harshly critical about it, but still expressing an honest opinion and an honest take on a game that did ultimately misadvertise itself on this specific platform. So hopefully that's not a mistake GOG will make again, characterize everything as a review bombing endeavor instead of just, you know, isolating the few that maybe use language that crosses the line, relegate them as their own instances of reviews that violate guidelines, but ensure that the other reviews that had something constructive and genuine to say, ensure that those are acknowledged in a way that doesn't feel like they perceive that as hostile when those kinds of feedback are important, and in the case here, valid, as GOG and CD Projekt, or I guess this member of the GOG team, admitted to. With all said and done, let this be a learning experience, and hopefully in the future GOG won't repeat something like this, and hopefully they'll somehow be able to work something out with IO so that things can be loosened up to allow Hitman to be a game that meets the conditions to be released on a platform like GOG that prides itself on its DRM-free aspect. But that's just one man's take on all of this. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on GOG's response and their backstepping of how they release Hitman Game of the Year Edition on GOG and their decision to ultimately remove the game from the store until things change, and what you expect will happen in the future and whether you think IO will open up and be more flexible about this. Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.